everyone, I am your presenter for this day. My name is Arnaldo, BE Ed 2B. And the topic that I will be discussing is in the Chapter 7, Topic 4. What are the general guidelines in grading test or performance task? But before we delve in, I want you to look at this word search. Can you find all the hidden words in this word search? Words can go in the following directions. The total number of words that you will be finding are 5 words. I will give you an ample amount of time to find it. Okay, the time is up. Did you find all the hidden words in this word search? Here are the following words: stick, be, develop, inform, and decide. These words are the initial memory illustration which you need in order for you to easily memorize the general guidelines in grading test or performance task. Here are the initial memory illustration. Number 1. Stick for stick to the purpose of the assessment. B for be guided by the desired learning outcomes. Develop for develop grading criteria. Inform for inform learners what scoring methods are to be used. And lastly, decide on what type of test scores to use. Did you have some fun in finding the initial memory illustrations? Okay, that's good to hear. Now, I will be discussing it to you. Please be attentive and jot down notes in order for you to keep up with the lesson. Is that clear, class? If that's so, let's begin. So what are the general guidelines in grading tests or performance tasks? Utmost care should be observed to ensure that grading practices are equitable, fair, and meaningful to learners and other stakeholders. It is therefore important that when constructing a test or performance task, the methods and criteria for grading learners' responses or answer should be set and specified. Grading is a way for educators to evaluate each individual student's performances and learning. Grading is the traditional method of measuring whether or not students are participating successfully in their classroom experiences and whether or not they are learning. Letter or number grades are easy to add up and record, and a teacher can quickly get a sense of student success or failure by scanning the student's grade. Hence, it is essential to consider the purpose of the assessment, the ability level of entire group being tested, and the nature of the task to be performed. The following are the general guidelines in grading tests or performance tasks. Do you remember the initial memory illustration? Well, here is the first one. Stick to the purpose of the assessment. Before coming up with an assessment, it is important to determine the purpose of the test. Will the assessment be used for diagnostic purposes? Will it be formative, summative assessment? But before that, what is assessment? Assessment is defined as a proper collection, interpretation, and use of information in regards to learning. It gives the teacher a better awareness about the knowledge of peoples and their understanding, and what our learning experiences are also about their skill and personal characters and capabilities. Take note, the assessment should be in sync and supportive of learning. It should be and should be valid in nature. The assessment should be proper and manageable, and it should be support the judgment of teacher. And lastly, it should support accountability. Now that you have a background about Assessment. Here are the following different types of assessment. Number 1 is diagnostic assessment. It is primarily used to gather feedback about the learner's prior knowledge or even misconception about the start of a learning activity. When the objective is to identify individual strengths in areas of improvement, diagnostic assessment is the one that is used. It helps to inform next step in the assessment, including the strength and even weaknesses area of improvement in other characteristics. Unlike evaluation assessment, diagnostic does not aim to grade the candidates, but rather it helps in diagnosing the issues after which the teacher can take steps to address it. Number 2 is the formative assessment. Its results are also to be used by the learners to reflect and monitor their own learning and therefore should not be graded. It includes a variety of formal and informal assessment produced which are used by the teacher in the classroom so that they can modify the teaching and improve the students' attention retention and his learning activity. The primary objective of formative assessment is to involve the attention of the student and to help them to achieve their goals. It is performed in the classroom and determine the strengths and weaknesses of students. The routine question during the teaching of a lesson is an example of formative assessment. And lastly, the summative assessment. Summative comes from the word summary. The summative assessment arrives at the very end of the learning sequence and is used to record the student overall achievement at the end of the learning. The primary objective of this is to measure a student achievement post-instruction or learning. Examples of summative assessment are midterm and final paper and examination, which give overall knowledge tests of a student at the end of the learning. It gives insight into an overall scenario of understanding of student regarding particularly learning of a topic. Summative assessment help to understand the question like what happened and what went wrong at the end of the learning. The second guideline is be guided by the desired learning outcomes. Learning outcome is the knowledge and skill that student must achieve by the end of the lesson. Thus, it provides clear measurable criteria for assessing learners' achievement and progress. Here is an example of learning outcome in English speaking skill that is flashed on your screen. Indeed, the learner should be informed early on what are the expectations of them insofar as learning outcomes are concerned, as well as how they will be assessed and graded in the test. Such information can be disseminated through the course syllabus or during course introduction. The third general guideline is develop grading criteria. Grading criteria to be used in traditional tests and performance tasks should be made clear to the students. Similarly, learners should be informed of the weight of each criterion. Grading criteria and weight should be applied fairly and consistently. A holistic or analytic rubric can be used to map out the general criteria. Developing grading criteria may be tedious. However, having clear criteria can save you time in grading process, makes the grading process more consistent and fair, communicates expectation to learners, and help learners understand how their work is graded. In addition, having clear criteria not only saves you time in grading, but it also helps you to make the grading process more consistent. In addition, it enables you to explain very clearly to the students the kind of work you expect from them and help students understand why you have given their assignment a certain grade and how their work might be improved. It also enables you to clearly diagnose students' strengths and weaknesses, and thereby to focus on improving the appropriate areas more effectively. Here is an example of grading criteria in Studio Art assignment rubric that is also flashed on your screen. Now we come to the fourth guideline. Inform learners what scoring methods are to be used. Learners should be made aware before the start of testing whether their test responses are to be scored based on number rights, negative marking, or through non-conventional scoring methods. As such, the learners will be guided on how to mark their responses during the test. Such instructions should be followed and applied consistently to every learner in the same class or other learners in the same course but different classes. Thus, informing learners what scoring methods are to be used will help promote students' conscious understanding of how they learn and to understand how and why they are learning the course. The last and fifth guideline is decide on what type of test score to use. As discussed earlier, there are different ways by which students' learner can be measured and presented. Perhaps in a particular test can be measured and reported through raw score, percentage score, criterion reference score, or norm reference score. That is also discussed by my group mates. Thus, it is important that different types of learning scheme be used for different test, assessment, or performance tasks. Learners should be also informed at the start of what grading system is to be used for a particular task or task. Thus, indeed, it is important that different types of learning scheme are to be used for different tasks, assessment, tests, or performance to have a clear, accurate, consistent, and unbiased outcomes of grades. Moreover, it serves as a basis for students of their performance in class and fairly communicates learning progress and assessment, even achievements. Now, to wrap up our discussion, here are the initial memory illustration for you to be guided. Number 1 is to stick. Stick to the purpose of the assessment. It is important to be clear on what purpose your test to your student will be. Number 2 is B. Be guided by the desired learning outcomes. Learning outcome is the knowledge and skill that student must achieve by the end of the lesson. Thus, it provides teacher to have a clear, measurable criteria for assessing learners' achievement and progress. Number 3, develop. Develop grading criteria. Grading criteria is a helpful tool for teachers to have time in the grading process, makes the grading process more consistent and fair, communicates expectation to learners, and help learners understand how their work is graded. Number 4 is to inform. Inform learners what scoring methods are to be used. Learners should be made aware before the start of testing on what scoring methods are to be used to inform students on how they will be evaluated. And lastly, decide. Decide on what type of test scores to use. Decide on how students' learning can be measured and presented to make the grading process organized. Well, that ends our discussion lesson for this day. I hope that you enjoy and learn something. Again, this is Aisel E. Arnaldo, your presenter for this day. Have a nice day, everyone!